Howdy, partner. That was something special. Hi, welcome back to reality. Today, our Haute history video is one that I'm pretty excited about. I think it's shorter than the other ones and it's pretty like straightforward. It's not like that complicated. And I think it's shorter because I'm not talking about any one specific person. So if there's an offshoot of this video you want me to do, please let me know on here or on my Instagram. But today I'm talking about how women contributed to the settlement of the Wild West, and specifically how prostitution was involved in exploding commerce. So, also this makeup look I feel like is so cool. I haven't done anything like it recently. Like a pink smoky eye, like what? With a little bit of highlight, but mostly matte complexion. So, I used some products I haven't used in a while or haven't used ever, like this lip color. If you like what you see, please keep watching. So I'm going to start with primer. Spread around, you guys, and that'll help keep our complexion matte as well. So the Wild West, had a lot more opportunities for like equality than we think by default. I also think if I lived in the Wild West, I totally would have a blue and white striped top, bodice. That's why I wore this. Some context, it's a dad shirt. Some context, it's a 1880s bodice. Okay, so just deal with that. I'm going to use Shape Tape Matte Foundation today, just because I haven't used it in a while. And it's matte. Also, so much lighter than my current skin color. Oh well, we'll see. But I'm going to be talking specifically about ladies in the Wild West who were soiled doves. Scandalous. But there were a lot of other opportunities for women in general in the Wild West. Okay, so they weren't all just prostitutes. Like there were a lot of opportunities for women to own land and be teachers and like set up their own homesteads and stuff like that. So the West supplied a lot of opportunities. I say the West is in like developing America that was often had a similar culture across the US because of like mining. Gold mining or coal mining or things like that. It's kind of interesting because in Colorado, there are a lot of little towns that started as mining towns. And that's where I live right now. And it's kind of fun because like, I grew up in South Dakota, I went to university in Wyoming, and now I live in Colorado. And those are all like cowboy-y states. I'm gonna go right in with concealer. That does a pretty good job, doesn't it? I do like that foundation. I forgot that I liked it. And some areas where we need a little more coverage. These cheeks, that scarring is just probably not gonna go away very easily. Okay, so as I'm blending this out, there were lots of opportunities in developing towns for women to have lots of different types of jobs, storekeeping, and teaching, like I said, and there were lots of opportunities for women to own land, so that's exciting. But one of the most lucrative, well, and even Wyoming, it was the first state in the United States to allow women's voting, and that, like at first glance, is like, oh cool, that's really neat, but it was actually because they didn't want to count. They wanted a certain amount of seats in the Senate, and they didn't allow African-American people to vote, so instead they let women vote, which is its own topic of debate. I'm just going to set this with some powder. Now, women would not have worn makeup in this time unless they were soiled doves. So we're gonna go light on certain areas, and the eyes are gonna be the focus of this makeup look. But I wanna keep the complexion pretty clean. So I'm gonna go ahead and just finish that while we're here. And because I use Shape Tape under my eyes, I don't need to powder super intense. Before I get into the soiled doves, there was a Homestead Act. This powder is like all over the place. I'm gonna use just a pink blush. Keeping it simple with pinks today. Just really light flush of color. There's a Homestead Act that made it possible for women, whether married, divorced, single, to own land. So that was a very exciting piece. It was the Homestead Act of 1862. The Homestead Act of 1862 offered 160 acres of land to those who could pay a small fee, dig a well, build a road, and construct a home within 5 years. So there were a lot of women that were like, I can forego my corset, okay, and make this happen. And so they did. So it like gave a bunch of women just like the opportunity to be their own homesteaders, which was very exciting. And the women who were not soiled doves, again, we'll get into that. I can't decide if I want highlighter or not. I think I'll wait to decide that. Got my pink highlighter, because why not? And then our eyes, I'm going to use pretty exclusively the Naked 3 palette from Urban Decay, because it's got all these really fun pinks and taupes and browns in it. We're going to use pinks and browns, but not in like a historically accurate way, because they wouldn't have worn a ton of makeup or these colors. But we're gonna try to go for like a Gibson girl, late 1860s, early 1900s Gibson girl eye look. I'm just putting on primer now, and then we'll go in with just a light matte flesh tone all over the eye. Cooking the food, preserving things, like canning things, that was all new. Not new, I shouldn't say, but that was all like their job, because they were all starting from scratch. They didn't necessarily have like established servitude and things like that yet, or could afford it. I'm gonna take the color, I just took the color Strange and put it all over the lid. And now I'm gonna take the color Limit and put that in my crease all the way through. So there were a lot of women that like, yeah, they had their own homes, but they also like established boarding houses and ran stores and ran shops and employed other people. So there were, I mean, women were not just like sitting around at this time in history in this region of the US. Maybe on the East Coast they were, but definitely not in the South or in the Wild West. And I'm not going to be afraid to bring that all the way in, because we want our eyes to look a little bit sunken. That's like a trademark of the Gibson girl. So she's like posing like that all the time. There's that pink color. And then I'm going to take just a smaller brush and take a darker color called Nooner and do that same thing, but in a more concentrated area. So just not blend it out as much. One thing to keep in mind is that the winters in the Wild West were just insane. It was really important for each person to pull their weight, because they had to be prepared for these like harsh winters where like wagons could get up into the mountains and they couldn't grow anything and their livestock were not doing as well and stuff like that. Like that's all really important to take into consideration. I'm going to take Nooner and put it on the lid as well. Nice. I like that. Because I grew up in South Dakota, I grew up reading the Laura Ingalls Wilder books. If you haven't read them, they're American classics. You should. I grew up not far from De Smet, South Dakota. So it's fun that like I grew up with those things very close to home. Okay, let's get into talking about these soiled doves. So it was like, obviously everybody in a culture forms that culture. I want to take, ooh, maybe this color called Dark Side. Ooh, maybe we want that one. Ooh, you guys, I can't decide. We'll use dark side to build up our color, and then maybe we can use something else. So we're gonna put this on the lid itself. So these ladies who were soiled, they saw a business opportunity and nothing more. Oftentimes these women got into prostitution and being madams at these boarding houses, quote unquote, because it was an incredible business opportunity. They saw, I wouldn't say a need, but they saw an opportunity and they took it. Gonna make sure it's really concentrated right next to the eyelid. I like this a lot. That's fun. And so there were, I'm sure, lots of women who judged these prostitutes and these madams, but when it comes to actually like the formation of society and culture in the Wild West, like these women were the ones doing it. Like they brought business to places, they brought commerce to places. Like think about the idea of commerce. Like when you go and visit a town, you stay in a hotel in that town, you shop in that town, you go to restaurants in that town. And so prostitutes, like, not only, I mean, provided places for people to stay, but lured cowboys into staying in those places in the first place. Got a little bit, oh dear, look what I just did. Well, that's pretty. Let's put that in the center of the lids. This is the color Liar. Just gonna put it in the center of the lid because I like how it looks. Now we should take care of that, don't you think? So these women were like a huge part of the development of the West because they were the ones who brought people into towns. Like, I might need to go back and just apply foundation to that spot. It's interesting because they weren't just prostitutes. Like they were saloons. They, like these brothels, like had a lot to offer in terms of culture. Like they were, I'm gonna start just building up those same colors on my under eye. They were saloons, they were music halls, they were dance like spots. Like these girls had a whole life for themselves here in these houses, in these brothels. They were well taken care of by the madams. The madams were oftentimes very wealthy. If their brothel was successful, the madam was wealthy and respected in terms of like a businesswoman. Maybe not respected by the other women in the town, but she was respected as a businesswoman. She was respected in terms of like women knew they could get a job from her, you know? And like in the West, it really was a question of survival. Like these women were like, all right, I gotta make a living. I'm not married. How are we gonna make this happen? And so like prostitution wasn't an awful option for them. These were almost, I think, always women who entered into it on their own. It wasn't like a slave trade situation. For the most part, I could be totally wrong about that fact across the board, but I'm pretty sure it was all like voluntary. And even though it was illegal, there were still like directories for towns that like a guy could come to town and look up which brothel he thought would be like best for what he was looking for. And it's like, oh, that's, So like it was something that wasn't like a secret necessarily. We had a technical difficulty, so you might be in a different spot than you were before. I can't find my eyebrow pencil, so we're going to improvise with dark brown eyeshadow. I don't remember what I was saying. I'm sure it was crucial. I'm just gonna fill these in a little bit. That's pretty good. Still want them to look soft and natural. Nice thing about like 1880s Gibson girl look is that they weren't messing with their eyebrows yet, so that was nice for me, for this particular contest. Obviously, it wasn't all fun and games. Like, there were lots of risks involved. There were like all sorts of, now we know about like STDs, I guess STIs is technically what they are, right? Like different diseases and sicknesses you can get from like unprotected, irresponsible sexual activity. And they didn't necessarily know about those, but obviously they did know about pregnancy, and like medicine was still really rudimentary at this point. And so like there was always a risk that they could get pregnant, and like, you know, obviously I'm sure they tracked their cycles and they weren't dumb, but like those were kind of part of the job. But the ones who didn't like get sick from disease or die in childbirth, like a lot of them went on to be, some of them went on to be outlaws, like the outlaws we like know and love, you know. Yeah, some of them went on to marry people, some of them went on to be really wealthy, and so they didn't need to marry anybody. And like sometimes, like when women started as prostitutes, they would continue in the field and then become madams, and then were able to open like their own homes. So I'm not encouraging the activity, but I'm saying as a business opportunity in this time in history and in this place, it was pretty lucrative. I don't know if I want to put, maybe I'll put a little highlighter on my nose just because it's cute. Nice. I have lots of different, lip options. I'll show you what all I grabbed. Look at all these lip options. I grabbed this NYX Lippy Lingerie because it's called lingerie, and I didn't know if that would be like kind of cute. I kind of want a little highlighter on my cheeks only because I'm used to it, just a tad. Perfect, great. Maybe don't do any more than that. And I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't do any contouring. I think I might use a little bit of bronzer around my forehead because these were the kind of rough and tough women who weren't concerned about their complexion. So just maybe around my forehead, I will warm this up a little bit, but I'm not going to like contour because that's not the look we're going for. A lot of these women went on to be inspiration for characters like Belle Watling from Gone with the Wind, and there were lots of different women that went on to be pretty famous within their like circles, and then like we know them because of history, obviously. But like these women went on to be pretty important in their societies, especially the madams who owned these businesses. This article says, being a madam required a great deal of skill, as well as monitoring the cleanliness of the brothel and providing training, cosmetics, and clothes. Large focuses for madams were keeping their business transactions discreet and staying on the good side of the law. So that's obviously the bummer with like illegal activities. They had to be like a little bit sneaky about it, but that was kind of part of their job. They did so by contributing money to charitable organizations, schools, and churches. So depending on who was going to these brothels probably determined where this money would go. So whether it was an established town, like just a little mining camp, it was gonna be pretty easy. I'm gonna use this NYX Lip Lingerie, but I'm going to dot it on with, this is in the color French Maid. Ooh, okay. That's kind of fun. I'm gonna use my finger to just kind of blot it on. So it was like not hard for people to find the kind of company they were looking for, because women knew if they showed up where the men were, they were gonna make money. I think the makeup is done, and I think I'm done sharing information. I really like how this makeup turned out. I didn't think I would, but I do. At first I was like, pink and brown and like flesh colors, that's gonna feel like Neapolitan ice cream. But I like how it turned out. Women were crucial to the settling of the wild, wild West. That's the gist of this. And a large portion of that was prostitution. Ta-da! What a way to end. Those are not my That's not my version. That's, I believe, to be pretty true from the resources I gathered. And small disclaimer, this is pretty exclusive, I think, to like white women, white single women. There are a whole bunch of different things about Native American women and like how they survived the Wild West, and the Civil War was happening around, I mean, a little bit before. We think of the Wild West as like 1880s to like 1900s or like 1870s, but the Civil War was right before that. And so there were a lot of African American people in the Wild West, and obviously when the Civil War happened, a bunch of them were freed. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of like cross-cultural interactions happening. But I just knew I wanted to talk specifically today about the soiled doves of the Wild West. I don't know why, but I think that was suggested to me, but I remember watching a documentary or something about it a while ago. It was really interesting. So I'm glad I did it. I like this makeup. With a matte complexion, this isn't necessarily like summery. I think the colors are like, you could get away with like a pink smoky eye for summer for sure. But like a full matte foundation, like I wouldn't necessarily do that in the summer. Also, my brooch was my grandmother's, so there's that. Also, it looks pretty cool. I might wear this outfit tomorrow. I think I shared all that I need to share with you people. Good evening. Keep it real. And I hope this video was fun for you.